Riding home back to Athens. I'm going to start this just stationary just because I'm afraid that my mount is going to fall and I'm going to have to catch my phone. Who is the most difficult player to replace on the 2022 team for this 2023 team? To me, at first, I was like, well, Stetson Bennett's not the best player that's leaving, but I think he is the most difficult to replace. I think the answer to that question is my answer to that question is Stetson Bennett. I think that Georgia, I don't even know if it'll be super close. Jack Podlesny is one of them, who is like, well, that was a reliable kicker. How do we replace him? And there's obviously some other star players, but here we start this journey. But Stetson Bennett, the quarterback, the guy who had the incredible story. How do you replace that guy, right? That's the most difficult position to replace. Even if they have guys that they really like at that spot, we're talking about a Heisman finalist quarterback. You can say whatever you want about the scheme, about the talent around him, about the weapons, about how good the defense was. This is a guy that took what was in front of him and was a Heisman finalist, and you can't just act like that didn't happen. Ryan Curley from DAWGS post here talking about who Georgia has to replace, how difficult it's going to be to replace some of these guys, and make sure you're checking out Double Dogs. I know some of you guys have gotten your Double Dogs. They're being shipped out. We are ordering more to ship more out, so I thank you for your patience. It's been kind of a difficult ride getting them printed out, but those are getting shipped out. So your Double Dogs is on the way, whether it's in this first order or we're receiving new books as well, and we're going to get those out. And of course, DoorDash, all those links are down below as I try to make sure this doesn't fall. We're actually rolling really steady. Well, there we go. So, Stetson, 4,100-ish passing yards, 27 touchdowns, 10 on the ground. I thought it was pretty accurate. He made a jump from 21 to 22. Like, he was a better football player in 22, and that's, part of why he was a Heisman finalist. But his story is just something that's not going to be repeated probably for a long time, something along those lines. I mean, this is a guy, the story, right? But what's important is in all of the crunch time moments, Stetson, for the most part, showed up, right? Alabama, someone made an interesting point to me the other day. Well, you can't ignore Alabama SEC Championship 21 where they get destroyed. I agree. Stetson played, he didn't even just play bad. I thought he was pretty bad. All right? He had some moments, but he was pretty bad in that game. Some bad picks, some bad decision making. They couldn't score when they needed to score. Outside of that, in these postseason games, Stetson straight up was just balling out. Orange Bowl offensive MVP. I thought that was kind of one of his underrated performances when you look back. National championship, clutch touchdowns, obviously the clutch throw to A.D. Mitchell. It's just going to go down as one of the best plays in Georgia history. And the national championship against Alabama, defies odds, the drama of it. So he's a guy who showed up in big moments. He's a leadership. Obviously his age does mean natural experience and leadership. It's hard to replace that. They catered the offense to him. Todd Monken did, to his strengths and weaknesses, and that was one of the reasons why Todd Monken is now going back to the NFL to be an NFL coordinator, because he's a good coordinator. But, my brakes are squeaky. That is frustrating. I don't like the way that sounds. So, for Stetson, and then in 2022, obviously the perfect season, had down moments, but propelled himself. And he's a guy who had 6 total touchdowns in the national championship and helped lead game-winning drives against Ohio State when they were down, and had incredible throws and incredible stat line against LSU and helped them put up 50 in the SEC championship. All of that happened, and the question is, are the guys behind him capable of doing that? And we don't really know the answer because we haven't seen them in a starting role. I think it'll end up being Carson Beck, but it's not impossible for Gunnar Stockton or Brock Vandegrift to take this job here over the next few weeks or over the next few months. It's certainly possible, but to me, it's Carson Beck. Replacing your quarterback, your leader, that story, a guy that was productive, a guy that was clutch, is, to me, the obvious answer for who is the most difficult to replace. Because who are the other guys? I think Christopher Smith's really difficult to replace. Don't get me wrong. I think Christopher Smith will be difficult to replace. A guy similar who, worked his way up the depth chart, worked his way to being an All-American, worked his way, had the moments. Clemson. I think of the LSU moment. I think of some hits he made against Oregon. He had an interception against Bryce Young in the national championship. Christopher Smith was around for big moments and was a big part of big moments. I think Broderick Jones is going to be tough to replace. I think he's one of the most athletic tackles we've seen in a while. And I don't know if he allowed a sack in his entire career as a starter. I think that Nolan Smith's difficult to replace because he's an athletic freak. He was productive when he was in the game a lot, and his leadership. I think that Darnell Washington's hard to replace too. Don't get me wrong. My general point, I think Jalen Carter is the best defensive player they've had in a while. But we have seen the guys behind those guys play more. Who's honking? It's not about me. We've seen... Just shut up, bro. I don't know if you're honking at me or not. We've seen these guys behind those guys. We've seen the defensive stars and some of the other guys weave in and get more playing time. Brock Vandagriff and Gunnar Stockton have zero significant playing time. Carson Beck doesn't have any significant playing time, but he's played, right? So we've seen bits and pieces of Carson Beck, and we think, well, there's flashes there, right? But we saw Marvin Jones make plays. We saw Bear Alexander make plays. We saw David Daniel make plays. We know that there are a lot of safeties and a lot of defensive backs in that room. Keely Ringo is a guy I didn't even name, a Georgia legend. But Dalen never gets in there. Kirby, I trust Kirby with the defensive backs. I trust Will Muschamp with the defensive backs. I don't worry about them as much because they do such a good job with that group. But you're replacing a quarterback that won 2 national championships. He's not the only reason they won, and maybe he's not even the main reason they won. Maybe he's not, but he's a big reason why they won, and he's a big reason why they were in the positions they were in, and it is going to be the most difficult to replace, whether Carson Beck's good or not. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has 5 offensive MVP trophies to his name in postseason in the last 2 years, right? I believe he got it against the LSU. He is the most legendary Georgia football player ever. I think that his story and accomplishments have surpassed Herschel. Herschel certainly too, but I mean, Stetson is... It's going to be weird when he's not there. It's going to be strange when Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff or Gunnar Stockton walk out there as a starting quarterback because of how much success and how much history there is with Stetson the last 2 years. I just think it's going to be a little bit strange. And it's going to be hard to replace. I think that those guys are all talented. I think they're all capable. I think that Carson Beck is ready to be the starter. I think he's had 3 years to prepare. It'll be interesting to see how much changes with Mike Bobo, but I think there are going to be drastic changes just because it's Mike Bobo and a different type of quarterback, right? It's a new coordinator and a new quarterback. The offense is going to be different next year. Some of the weapons are gone. But to me, Stetson is the most difficult to replace. Even if Jalen Carter is a generational talent, even if Nolan Smith was a number 1 overall prospect, even if Broderick Jones is a freaky left tackle, even if Darnell Washington's freaky, the ball is in Stetson Bennett. The ball is in the quarterback's hands almost every play, pretty much, right? And that is hard to replace. A guy with that leadership experience, clutch ability, the story. It'll be tough, and it'll be weird to not see 13 walking out there under center, even if he didn't start that many games at Georgia. It's not like he was some 4-year starter. This guy was around a long time. It's going to be strange when he's not out there under center or in the shotgun. That's all I had to say. Double Dogs, DoorDash, Red Zone, all that stuff down below. We'll see you at thesitetalkbros.com. Thanks for watching.